You were saying...
Oh, you gotta give him that huck, too, and spit on that thing. You get me?
She refused to keep her fat mouth shut.
Rachel Zegler made it so hateable that you really sabotaged and took hundreds of millions of dollars from the studio. Rachel Zegler is sitting in an empty movie theater watching her movie, giggling hysterically and maniacally. The level of delusion should be studied.
Rachel Zegler's meteoric rise to fame may have just crashed and burned faster than Disney's box office numbers. The Snow White star who once told half of America to never know peace is now facing the reality that Hollywood isn't about your politics. It's about putting butts in seats. The story of Rachel Zegler's casting as Snow White was controversial from the beginning. In 2021, Disney announced the then relatively unknown actress would star in their live-action remake of their first ever animated feature film. After her breakout role in Spielberg's West Side Story, Zegler seemed positioned to become Disney's next princess. But something went terribly wrong along the way. What started as a standard Disney remake became a textbook case of how not to promote a major film. While most stars understand their job is to build excitement for a project that employs thousands of people and costs hundreds of millions of dollars, Zegler took a different approach. First, there was her infamous interview where she dismissed the original 1937 film.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
In that single statement, Zegler didn't just rewrite Disney's most iconic princess tale. She essentially told millions of fans who grew up loving the original that they were wrong to do so. Instead of honoring the legacy she was inheriting, she positioned herself as superior to it. But the controversies didn't stop there. When the 2024 election results came in, Zegler couldn't contain her political views, despite being the face of a film that needed to appeal to the entire American public.
I find myself speechless in the midst of this. Another 4 years of hatred, leaning us towards a world I do not want to live in, leaning us towards a world that will be hard to raise my daughter in. P.S. She has no daughter. She has no children at all. Leading us towards a world that will force her, who's her, your daughter who doesn't exist, okay, to have a baby she doesn't want. Talk about borrowed worry, fellas.
She didn't stop there. In perhaps her most inflammatory statement,
I echo Ethel Kane's statement more than anything. May Trump supporters and Trump himself never know peace.
Let that sink in. The star of Disney's Snow White, a character known for kindness and grace, wished that half of America would never know peace. The same American she needed to buy tickets to her movie. This wasn't just a bad PR move, it was career suicide. Megyn Kelly, known for her sharp commentary, didn't hold back when discussing Zegler's behavior.
And then she, minutes later, followed it up with, and never forget, free Palestine. This is just a few months after 10/7. It was it hadn't even been a year. And they were like, my God, what?
And isn't her co-star Jewish?
Yes.
The conflict between Zegler and her co-star Gal Gadot, who is Israeli and served in the IDF, created additional behind-the-scenes tension.
There's rumors that she and Gal Gadot don't get along either because one's pro-Palestinian, one is pro-Israel. It's just a total nightmare for the studios.
Disney executives were apparently so alarmed by Zegler's behavior that they took extraordinary measures.
They tried, they flew an executive, one of the producers, out to go visit personally with Rachel Zegler to say, could you please take that down? Because we understand you can have your political views, but those aren't really helpful while you're trying to build an audience for a movie. Maybe you could save them for your diary and your friends, but maybe not, maybe just take the tweet down. And she wouldn't.
The son of Snow White producer Mark Platt, Jonah Platt, confirmed this incident in a scathing social media response.
You really want to do this? Yeah, my dad, the producer of an enormous piece of Disney IP with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, had to leave his family to fly across the country to reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie for which she signed a multi-million-dollar contract to get paid and do publicity for.
He continued with a brutal assessment.
This is called adult responsibility and accountability, and her actions clearly hurt the film's box office. Free speech does not mean you're allowed to say whatever you want in your private employment without repercussions. Tens of thousands of people worked on that film, and she hijacked the conversation for her own immature desires at the risk of all the colleagues and crew and blue-collar workers who depend on that movie to be successful. Narcissism is not something to be coddled or encouraged.
These weren't just anonymous industry whispers. This was the producer's son publicly confirming what many suspected. Zegler's behavior had damaged the film's prospects. The fallout was predictable. When Snow White finally hit theaters in March 2025, it bombed spectacularly.
Early estimates suggested that they would take in 48 to 58 million in the first weekend. Apparently, it did 43 million in its first weekend. It cost $270 million to make. $270 million.
For context, Ben Shapiro pointed out,
Disney's Cinderella, which for my money is still the only good live-action Disney remake, mainly because it was directed by Kenneth Branagh, who actually is a terrific director. That one did $91.8 million in its opening weekend against a $138 million budget. Both figures adjusted for inflation.
the audience reaction was equally devastating. What makes this situation particularly interesting is Zegler's response to the failure. Instead of showing humility or self-awareness, she doubled down with posts celebrating the film as the #1 movie in the world, despite playing in nearly empty theaters.
Cheering for herself. In the greatest Disney box office bomb in the history of Disney live-action remakes, but certainly also the end of her career. The bliss of total stupidity and narcissism.
This level of detachment from reality left commentators baffled.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine speed ramping the end of your career so quickly? It's really impressive if you think about it. Rachel Zegler is so toxic that it's hard to see how you pull out of this.
But beyond Zegler's personal career implosion lies a deeper issue. As Megyn Kelly explained, this represents a fundamental disconnect between Hollywood and the American audience.
It's the old, it truly is go woke, go broke, but also don't alienate half of the country when you're putting out a product meant to appeal to all.
Kelly also highlighted how Zegler's behavior encapsulates a larger cultural problem.
So she just encapsulates everything that most of us cannot stand about modern day feminism and the left in general. And Hollywood, they hate the right, they hate Trump. It's not enough to dislike the candidate. You have to hate him and hate his supporters.
The entitlement displayed by Zegler seems to represent a generational shift in workplace attitudes.
Has this mentality, and she's not the only one. It's kind of a common mentality that, hey, the only thing that matters is how I feel. It's the only thing that matters in the world. And there are no obligations or responsibilities that I could possibly have that would outrank my own feelings.
What's particularly remarkable about this case is that even fellow entertainment industry professionals were appalled by Zegler's behavior. For example, Jonah Platt's comment highlights the real-world impact of her actions on the crew.
Tens of thousands of people worked on that film, and she hijacked the conversation for her own immature desires at the risk of all the colleagues and crew and blue-collar workers who depend on that movie to be successful.
This raises important questions about the responsibilities of entertainers. When thousands of jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars depend on a film's success, should actors be allowed to alienate potential audiences with their personal politics? Michael Knowles, who reviewed the film, noted how the controversies overshadowed what could have been a simple children's movie.
The movie is really, really bad. And Ben, you and I have gone back and forth. You're very harsh on a lot of movies. I tend to see some redeeming features.
He continued,
on being fair, the movie was absolutely terrible. It's not the single worst movie I've ever seen, but in every way that the movie differed from the beloved 1937 original, it was worse.
What makes this case study so fascinating is that Zegler's public relations disaster wasn't limited to a single incident. She managed to insult the source material of her own film, tell half of potential moviegoers to never know peace, create tension with her co-star over geopolitical issues, refuse to comply with studio requests to tone down political messaging, Attack the team who cast her in West Side Story by implying they were racist. Complain about her working conditions despite making millions the result? A $270 million film that may never break even. The Rachel Zegler Snow White controversy isn't just about one actress's poor judgment. It represents a clash between Hollywood's political bubble and the economic reality of making entertainment for a diverse audience. When asked if Zegler's career was effectively over, Megyn Kelly didn't mince words.
Do you think your career's over after this?
I do.
And it's been poison.
I do.
And
Yeah,
it's been
she's fucked
so
up as poison.
poisonous. And if she hadn't have opened her mouth, I think that this movie might have done well. They might have just been able to ride on the hopium of the movie and some well-cut trailers, and people would have paid to go see it, and then it would have fallen off when people knew it was garbage. But Rachel Zegler made it so hateable that you really sabotaged and...
Kelly further reflected.
I mean, do you know like how hard it is to find an attractive young woman in Hollywood who can act in sin? It's not hard. Like who just isn't going to offend half the country. There'll be 25,000 more just like her knocking on the same doors that she had open to her. She had the opportunity of a lifetime, and instead of being humble and grateful, she was entitled and a snot.
What we've witnessed with Zegler is perhaps the fastest rise and fall story in recent Hollywood history, from Spielberg discovery to box office poison in less than 4 years. The lesson in entertainment: your job is to entertain, not alienate half your audience before they've even bought a ticket. As the dust settles on Disney's Snow White disaster, the question remains, how many more hundreds of millions must Hollywood lose before they remember that Republicans buy movie tickets too?